okay. Well, grab some coffee real fast. I'm just kidding.
All right,
Alhamdulillah.
so Noura, we are live on YouTube right now.
All righty. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone to Muslim Marriage, our podcast, where we are going to be talking about marriage in Islam. We're going to be talking with Dr. Aysha Wazwaz, inshallah. So, let's see a little bit about Dr. Aysha. MashaAllah, she was born in Minnesota, and she did know Arabic, growing up somewhat from her parents, and then her and her family moved to Jerusalem, to Quds, in Palestine, and that is where she studied Sharia. Um, and mashallah, she got her bachelor's in Dawah, and let's see, she graduated from the Fundamentals of Islam College with her main fiqh professor, Dr. Hussam ad-Din Afani. And then she got her master's and her major in contemporary Islamic sciences. She presented this thesis under the title The Portrayal of Islam and Muslims in the Neoconservative Media in the USA. And she got her PhD, mashallah, from Jenin University in Lebanon.
Yeah.
Uh, and mashallah, she's been a huge asset to sisters in Minneapolis and Minnesota, and honestly, all across the US, subhanAllah, and now internationally. Allahu Akbar. So we are going to start our podcast, inshallah. Welcome, Dr. Aysha.
وعليكم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته and Allah يبارك فيك نورا ربي يحفظكم جميعا. It's really a pleasure and I think you overpraised me Noura, but inshallah Rabbil Alameen would make me better than what people think of me, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant me the ikhlas, grant me the sincerity, and grant me uh, the energy to do furthermore, inshallah. Allahumma ameen.
Ameen, ameen. Thank you so much for joining us. So first, I would like to start out by asking, what comes to your mind when you hear the word marriage in Islam?
So for myself, when I hear the word marriage in Islam, I think of companionship, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made marriage be as one of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He says, وَمِنْ آيَاتٍ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made the foundation of marriage be one that created a companion from your own selves, companion from male and female, and had made from between you mawadda, which is further than love because it contains affection, it contains companionship, it contains care, mercy, and the rahmah. And with it, along with it, is rahmah. So al-mawadda is farther than just a shallow love, but it's actually a deep affection that you have care, you have affection, and certainly there's no way to have this be a long-lasting relationship unless there is true integrity in between the two, that they would base it on taqwa. And that's the key thing. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He had mentioned يريد إصلاح يوفق الله بينهما, He was talking about certainly in situations of dispute. But if you were to look at the marriage in general, if both had integrity and both had the religious integrity, they would come in both with that intention. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had promised that He would bring about a tawfiq. It-tawfiq is success. It-tawfiq is victory. It-tawfiq is achievement.
I
So
love that. I love that. MashaAllah.
both come in with this sincerity, if both come in with this religious integrity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had promised that their intention would fruit in a successful relationship.
Alhamdulillah.
So this is what I would think of,
And honestly, it's just one word in Arabic, yet it you had to take that long to explain that one word. Allahu Akbar. We all need to learn Arabic, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. So then my next question basically is, why do you think marriage is given so much importance in the Quran and in the Sunnah?
So a couple things. If we are to look at the legal maxims in Islam, you look at tashri', you look at legislature in Islam. When you look at the vertebra of legislation in Islam, you would see a couple things. Number one is the relationship between the foundation talking about the early creation of mankind, which is the fitrah. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created for Adam, what did He create for him? He basically created for Adam not only a zawj, but it wasn't just a pair, but He created for Adam alayhi salam something that would give him that companionship, something that would give him an uns, tranquility, because Adam himself was feeling that loneliness, so he needed another pair. But here's one thing: He didn't create another Adam, another male, but He created something that was different, that completed his creation, and not necessarily the exact kind of His creation. Not the exact kind of the
I
creation.
love that. I love that. Completed each other.
Right, because if you were to create another boy, I mean, He could have made reproduction happen a different way, but just created another boy and made reproduction become, I don't know, the same way that you would have in plants or in animals. There could be eggs, there could be different way of reproduction, just like in plants, etc. But He made that there would be this type of connection between these two kinds to complete one another, because Adam would be incomplete without the other pair, which is also incomplete without him. So they would complete one another to make one whole. At the same time, when you look at the legislation, it takes you back to one, وإذ قلنا للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة. So you look at that khilafa piece of it. Marriage is another keystone, in another cornerstone for that khilafa, where that khilafa, in order to have that civilization, that continuation of creation, and the other piece of it, which is to build within this society a main legislation on ground for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that would bring about stability on earth, which is al-mizan.
Oh, yeah, Allah. I love that, because you're talking about the family, the khilafa in the family, and then it goes to the community, and then subhanallah,
You look at al-mizan. Al-mizan is a key thing, by the way, because al-mizan, when you look at Surah Al-Rahman, Al-Rahman, Allama al-Quran, خلق الإنسان, here's خلق الإنسان, created man. So when you look at created man, you cannot think of man being created without the piece of male and female. خلق الإنسان, علمه البيان, taught him where there's that communication. That communication is required. And notice how, subhanAllah, women have, when comes to communication, they are, you know, the way their anatomy, they speak before boys, they talk more, etc. And then you see that علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان. Then it takes you the whole universe. Then you've got the moon, you've got the stars, الشمس والقمر والنجم والشجر, whether we're speaking about the standing trees or whether we're speaking about the trees that grow on ground, all that. والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان. And even when you look at whether you're talking about the galaxy structure, or whether you're talking about the structure on Earth, or whether you're speaking about the whole universe and skies, etc. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانَ. You connected with that mizan, you connected with that structure. And without that structure, when he had in the beginning told you خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانِ, the creation of mankind, with that mizan along with it, and think of Adam alayhi salam, and then you put these pieces together and you look at the main legal maxims in Islam, the main legal maxims in the preservation of deen. What is the preservation of deen? Deen is basically the tawheed, basically the first part of it, which is ar-Rahman, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Without having that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're not going to understand not the balance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in this universe, and you're not going to understand why you were created with وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. You're not going to understand why.
It's all connected, subhanAllah.
Right, what the purpose of your life is. And finally, what puts these pieces together is basically that those legal maxims in considering the priorities, which is the main priority in understanding your deen, the preservation of human life and human soul, and the preservation of aql and mind, and the preservation of family and chastity, because the preservation of family is actually key to putting these pieces together. One, al-khilafa, two, al-mizan, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had also considered these legal maxims, which is part of it the preservation of nafs, and part of it is preservation of aql, preservation of chastity and family, and the preservation of wealth. When you look at marriage, marriage falls within the preservation of deen, because it basically keeps you away from zina and keeps you away from those different major sins, keeps you also in preservation of family, life basically, and the preservation of mind, because it definitely gives stability in mental health. And there are so many different studies about mental health and how good marriage and basically affects not only the mental health of the wife and the husband, but also the mental health and how important it is on the children's mental health. And number 4, which is
and to start a family. To
absolutely
have children, right?
Absolutely.
To keep the
Absolutely.
ummah going.
Absolutely. So this is basically the key thing about marriage in Islam. And I always like to look at it like it's a physics. Like how do we put these pieces together to have this mindset where it sees beyond let's call it the particular, or at least the partition, but to see it in a lens where it puts these little particles together to create a vision, to create an understanding. And once you create a mindset, you then would understand how to see through the vision of Quran and Sunnah. So whether it's reading marriage, or whether it's reading our own roles within this marriage, or whether it's distributing what we could do.
Now you're kind of getting to the next question that I wanted to ask. So many young girls, they want to prepare for weddings, right? But you know, they want to get the right dress, they want to have, you know, a nice banquet hall, you know, nice flowers, you know, the whole reception and everything. But how, I mean, how many people actually prepare for the actual wedding? I mean, and why do you think we put such an emphasis on the outside appearance rather than the actual marriage itself?
So this isn't new, Noura. I would say, you know, when you look at wedding, it is definitely containing a huge resemblance in a major shift in somebody's life.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
it's a huge shift in somebody's life. And even the Prophet ﷺ said, "Awlim walau bisha." The Prophet ﷺ said, make a walima. A walima is a feast. A walima is basically somewhat of a celebration to mark the continuation, the shift within the start of basically a new family. So there's definitely let's say an importance and a huge importance on this day and this celebration.
I
But
guess
at
it
the same
would
time,
vary based on culture, right?
right, it would vary based on culture, but at the same time, I would say during our time especially, I would say the focus on appearance, the focus on aesthetics was exaggerated, and this focus on aesthetics many times emptied it from the value and from the meanings that are basically within. So you would see a lot of focus on appearance, a lot of focus on aesthetics, and then all the different things that come within. I think we need to revive the importance of sabr, the
Yeah.
importance of a compromise, and how that is not necessarily just a word to say, but there's something beautiful in it. There's something
I
beautiful
love
within
that.
it.
Subhanallah.
I think we need to
Because it's
use
like
social.
some sisters are like, after the actual marriage and everything, well, the next day, what do we do?
Exactly.
You know?
And there's one thing, Noda, it happens so often that we would say, and there are even studies about this. It happens so often that women, once they get married, so the first few months of their marriage, they go into depression.
Hmm.
They go into depression, and many would come to me after marriage and say, okay, you know what, I decided that this isn't for me. And then they're rushing into a divorce, really just a month or two or three or four. And some have actually come to me after 2 weeks of marriage and said, I want a divorce.
Wow.
And I would, right, I mean, because they had anticipated somewhat of an irrational image of what marriage
Kind of
is.
like some Disney or Cinder. Well, I wouldn't recommend Disney now, but
Well, I mean,
like back in the day with the whole Cinderella, you know what I mean? Like everybody's just like, oh, they lived happily ever after, and everything was perfect all the time, you know?
well, one thing is that sometimes, whether we're speaking about media, when it comes to marriage relationships, sometimes there is somewhat of an irrational presentation of it, and at the same time, I would say unrealistic, and they either empty it of the different, let's call it struggles within, or whether they exaggerate the struggles. Exaggerating the struggles is harmful. Remember that married with children, exaggerating the struggles. Hey, you're
Yeah,
not going
yeah,
to
yeah.
have enough money. There are going to be problems. Men are, and that's what feminism also brings in. So you're
Mhm.
bringing in feminism that basically is discouraging women from marriage and telling them that men are just wanting to be babies and they want women to be babying them. They just want you to be their servant, and you're just right there trying to right now come in for men that can't be men, and they want you to be
SubhanAllah.
the woman that basically babies them because they don't want to hold responsibility and all of that, then you bring in feminism, who's also making marriage appear as if it's something that is abusing women.
And I have another point. So here, I mean, I'm near DC, right? So here, you know, I feel like there's more, you know, like second generation, even third generation people here. But so sometimes you'll find that, you know, sisters and brothers, they marry from different cultures. And I was just curious, like, does culture play a big role in rulings in Islam? And maybe can you give us like some examples?
So marriage is a number of different things that will affect the personality and will have a major role in the relationship, because you know this comes in frequently, where people would come to me and say, hey, you know, I want you to give me the fatwa on this and this, and I would say, well, I need you to go back to someone that actually is familiar and knows your culture. And this is extremely
Oh,
important
so you're talking
because
about the advisor, the actual advisor.
right, I'm talking, whether
Okay.
I'm talking about a mufti or an advisor, having somebody that understands your culture is important. And the reason why culture plays an important role is that it's not an issue of just the halal haram. You
Yeah,
have a definition that you try to mimic your father and your mother and how they played out marriage in the
that's
relationship.
true.
And same thing
Mm.
with your husband. He has an idea that he probably got of what marriage would look like and how we play it out. In other words, the distribution of roles, the distribution of defining what a female role is, what a male role is, defining how what it means to be feminine, what it means to be masculine, what it
Yeah, that's
means
true.
to support one another, what it means to uh, be uh, a wife, what it means to be a mother, what it means to basically play out all these roles. Sometimes, just keep this one in mind, sometimes sometimes when we speak about, talk about like the key things.
I know you're mentioning
Sorry, my
about.
son just distracted me. Sorry
Oh,
about that.
that's okay. That's okay. Well, because
Um,
you're kind of going into what my next question kind of is.
hold on. Let me just
Oh,
answer the
okay.
one about culture,
Sure,
Nora,
sure,
because
sure,
this is
sure.
the key one.
Okay.
When we look at culture, it affects the person's mindset.
Yeah,
It
that's true.
affects, without you realizing, it's part of your makeover. It's part of what affected the way that you see things. And when I say the way you see things, the way you define roles, how
Yeah.
you define who you are, how you define your responsibility, how you define, how you play out what it means to be feminine, what it means to be masculine, what it means to be a husband, what it means to be a father, what it means to be a working mother, what it means to be a stay-home mom. All of these different things, the definition of it, it basically comes in with the culture itself. And that's why, you know, when you say culture, you said first generation and second generation, etc. You know, the definition that a second generation, probably maybe, let's say Bengali, has a completely different definition of a second generation in America, for example, Palestinian. That
Yeah,
one
that's
has a
true.
certain definition, and that
Even
one has
though they were both born here, right?
right, right. But at the same time, the definition of, let's say, a second generation Palestinian is different than a first generation Palestinian.
I agree.
But at the same time, their definitions And, certainly you may call it watered down, you may call it altered, you may call it improved, advanced, changed. You can use whatever term that you would like to use. At the end of the day, there's a reality that we take in some imported ideas from different cultures, from the new culture that we're living in, and it would create a new mindset that would redefine our roles and who we are and how we contribute and what we do in case of disagreement. How is this a disagreement? Is this my responsibility? Is this your responsibility? And most
Or compromise,
importantly,
right?
boundaries. Noura, this is key.
Okay,
Boundaries.
okay.
Boundaries.
I'm taking notes.
Hold on, because when you say compromise, you're talking about boundaries. Is this my boundary?
Yeah, that's
Did you
true.
transgress my boundary or did I transgress your boundary? Who defines these boundaries? How do
Yeah.
we understand that boundary? Is this is your family intruding too far, or am I not intruding too far? And that's boundaries. And when you say boundaries, you're speaking about a number of different things that culture has a lot to say with defining borders and defining boundaries and how far you had probably went into my area of border or my boundary and how far they went or you went or how far I went and where is that border.
Yeah, I
Religion,
mean, if you're not familiar with that culture, like you wouldn't
right?
even know the border,
You know,
right?
many
Yeah.
times, people would say, well, I mean, the religion explained everything, right? I would say, yes and no. Because even within the religion, Allah, we would say, al-'adatu muhakkima. Al-'adatu muhakkima. In other words, culture itself is actually a reference in the religion. It's a reference. It's one of these things that we would return to in order to explain sometimes how we lay out and how we would practice certain texts. So not everything in the text is necessarily telling you, yeah, here are the details and here's how we understand it. العادة محكمة. العادة محكمة means we go back to culture. We would go back to culture as a reference to give us let's say the details in the general text that was mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah. So many times that's where the compromise happens. That certainly,
Yes.
sorry, but yes, the religion left certain areas as gray areas for you to figure out your borders. And that's
SubhanAllah.
where compromise comes in. Compromise comes in that, hey, he comes in with a different culture, his family come in with a different boundary. You have your boundary, but how can we figure out our boundary together? How can we communicate this?
Yes.
Sure that your boundary is respected and my boundary is respected. And sometimes we may be sensitive about a certain boundary and the other person's sensitive about a certain boundary. And that's when we
The
would say,
compromise.
absolutely, which is winning the heart that is more important than winning the argument.
I always love it when you say that. SubhanAllah.
Winning the heart is more important than winning the argument because you can insist that this is the argument. You can insist that this is what's right, this is what's wrong. But at the end of the day, you can have your evidence and they can have their evidence. But at the end of the day is that we have different perspectives that were formulated as a result of different mindset, different cultures, different upbringing, different relative visions of how we see things. That's why you could be so focused on the argument and forget, don't focus on the argument. Try to focus on the person. Try to focus that our biggest win is not trying to win that I won the argument, but our biggest win is to make this as a company, as a place of companionship, as a place of mawaddah and rahmah. That's the key thing. How can you
Subhanallah. Wait. So Dr. Aisha, I was just curious. So how is learning about the fiqh of marriage? How does that actually like empower Muslim women like in their roles of, being a wife, of being a companion, of being a mother? I mean,
So
how?
remember when we talked about the marriage basically falls within one, al-khilafa, when we had said al-khilafa, and then we talked about al-mizan, and then we talked about the legal maxims. Think of
Yeah.
these three together. You won't be able to understand what khilafa is and what it means to basically live this purpose that preceded your existence. Because remember, when he said, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, is Adam created yet? No, not yet. And then they said, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَا يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاء وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ. You look at this ayah, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَا يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا. They said, you're going to create a new creation that's going to create and cause chaos, مَا يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاء, and cause bloodshed. وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ. And we are worshiping you. When you look at these three things, they recognize that whatever creation that Allah is going to create, it must, one, if you're talking about Khalifa, that means there was a creation before Adam. Because of the word Khalifa actually means something that is after. Okay?
Yes. Yes.
And then he said,
And not just that, but like, how would they even know to ask these questions?
Right. So they were wondering if this is going to bring chaos. Is this going to be another type of chaos? And then he said, yes, bloodshed and all of that. What is that telling us? And then they said, why? Because there's no way to recognize one. The opposite of al-fasad is basically salah. There's no way to bring about stability, to bring about that salah, and salah is basically righteousness. There's no way to bring about righteousness unless you have a paradigm, unless you have a standard that you would return to. Because you would have, okay, this is the definition of justice, this is what it looks like, then this is what I'm supposed to follow. And when you talk about that being a key, that's what would bring about justice. And then he said, and then they said, وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ. Al-ibadah is key. Now, once you recognize that you were created to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is also including within it to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your daily life, that is the only time that you would recognize that marriage basically is part of that vertebra. Because what happened later? What happened next? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala علم آدم الأسماء كلها ثم عرضهم على الملائكة. Okay, he taught Adam the names. And then what did he do? And then he created for Adam a spouse. That's the key thing. So the first thing is recognize the purpose that preceded your existence, and this purpose that preceded your existence comes with it basically the knowledge. It's important to know, but you also need that companion to help you move on in putting these pieces together. So when you speak about marriage, hold on, to get to your question.
Okay.
When you talk about fiqh of marriage,
Wi-Fi network. Open the Google Home app.
Sorry.
Connect to Wi-Fi.
Be quiet. Okay, sorry.
When you're talking about fiqh of marriage, you're basically connecting these pieces together. What is my responsibility within this khilafah? How do I do? وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. How do I actually put in this parameter that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had laid out in terms of rights and responsibilities? How do I put these pieces together? There's no way to put these pieces together of what al-khilafah is, what being righteous means, and what it means to act upon justice, and what it means to do that, وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ, what it means to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In order to have that, what did we do? عَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. You got to learn.
Yes, and I feel
You
like
gotta
we're
learn.
we're
If
so concerned with like what our rights are. We
right,
don't know our
no,
responsibilities.
there's certain learning that one is supposed to be learning, whether we're speaking about learning the parameters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or learning the reasoning, the purpose behind the creation, or the purpose of why marriage was even there. And at the same time,
Yes.
finally, how to make it. That's the thing. It's like, okay, so you learn these key things, but then how do I make this relationship
Yeah,
into
like
a
put the pieces
relationship?
together, right?
Put the pieces together. So fiqh of marriage comes in to help us see the physics and the parameters, and basically see how these dots are connected together to understand our rights and responsibilities, and also connect how do we make a stable relationship, because we're so fixated on this type of a pragmatic lifestyle. This is my right, this is your right, this is how much I make, this is how much you are making.
We're
This is
not robots, right? You know,
well, the modern
SubhanAllah.
society, the modern society has had basically created out of us more of robots.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
I
affection,
agree.
care, compromise, love, all of that had been made into some form of nothing but aesthetics and appearance. That it's all about, hey, a walk on the beach. We're walking on the beach in a good picture. What makes the wedding an important time is basically all the picturing and all the photos, and how we look good on pictures, and how the whole family is appearing in this picture, and how I would look if I were to take a photo of this relationship. Is it aesthetic enough to basically hold hands? Is it aesthetic enough to I guess, I don't know, hold the coffee, and you get a straw and I get a straw? All of those aesthetic things, all
Yeah,
of those aesthetic things had really taken out the main relationship and what it really is standing on, and what it really
yes.
is based on. It's not based
It's
on
not just social media where you see everybody so happy all the
exactly.
time, you know? Yeah.
It took out the beautiful things that are more valuable than the way it might appear on a social media, or the way it might appear on a camera. Because those moments when we probably got into a major fight for a couple days, and that moment when, yeah, I guess we just all of a sudden pretended that I wanted a cup of coffee, when in reality, or probably she made him coffee even though she was so angry at him, and just put it on his desk. It's like, okay, I miss you. Or made him the food, or whatever. It's like, okay, or cleaned his office, or cleaned his, or ironed his clothes and made it available. Or he probably maybe just decided on that day to send a message, or maybe an emoji, or whatever it is. Or probably just come in and say, so what's cooking? Men don't do a very good job in expressing romance. So what's cooking? Did you cook
And
tonight?
and another thing is like, obviously you're going to have these moments of
Well,
dispute,
absolutely.
or
Well,
whatever. And I really feel like Islam has the solution for everything. So
right.
it
Well,
it has the
the point,
solution for these disputes too, and like just these
right.
kind of
Well,
conflicts.
that's the point that I wanted to make, Noura.
Okay.
The point that I wanted to make was, those moments that are really rich with meaning and not fake affection for the picture, are those moments when we make it into a dispute, but then we come back to each other. That moment doesn't appear on camera.
Oh,
And
yeah.
these are those are the richest moments.
That's true. If you don't have
I,
those, those obstacles or whatever, you can't appreciate like the good
you know,
times, you know.
what obstacles bring in is your willingness to compromise, even
Commitment, right?
right, but it's also that willing to compromise a lot of the different things that are important to you because you feel that I'm more important to you to win.
I love that.
That's
That's cute, actually.
when you compromise, you basically are telling the person, yes, I will give up on what is important to you, me, because you are more important.
SubhanAllah.
That's it.
That's nice.
That's the me. When you look at the marriages that had lasted for 40 years or 50 years and all of that, you see that, they just learned how to give up on many things. Why? Because to them, you're more important than, I don't know, a post that I probably put on social media. Yes, the most important reasons for disputes in marriages is all about ego, autonomy.
Yes.
Ego,
I think so.
autonomy in trying to prove myself. And with the society that we're living in,
Like I'm right and you're wrong.
it's really ego. It's hulul an-nafs. It's
Yes.
all about, hey, you are you're basically supposed to have this autonomy. And feminism basically came in to feed a lot of the ego.
Yeah.
A lot
Because
of it.
well, I mean, it's based on atheism, right?
Absolutely. Well, not everything in feminism, but
Okay.
a lot of it depends on which wave you're talking about. But when we're speaking about the influences here, when we're speaking about the influences that you would see, at least an implication, especially when you're talking about postmodern feminism, the implication is basically putting in a lot of feeding that
Those
it's all
ideas.
about your ego, it's all about your autonomy, it's all about your independence and not your relationship. Because Islam is telling you, well, the man cannot be independent without you, and you cannot be independent without him.
They go
You both
together.
need to
SubhanAllah.
create this foundation of a family that's also not independent from the rest of the family.
SubhanAllah.
That's also not independent from the rest of the family, because you never know. It takes a whole community to build a generation.
Yes, and it starts with the family, right?
Absolutely.
Like the family, and it's the whole community. And once we fix the families and the marriages, the situation, because I mean, I'll be honest, there's a lot of divorces going. Well, here in America, I mean, the non-Muslim community, I would say, there's tons of divorces. So how about the Muslim community, right? I mean,
Right.
obviously the problems surrounding us are going to be affecting us, right?
Right. So with the culture piece of it, I know I could see some people are wondering if they can ask questions, Noda. So I think it would be good to
well, we can so what we can do is kind of wrap this up and then kind of do a separate Q&A session. Because I'm super excited about your course, your fiqh of marriage course coming up this fall. And I know that classes are going to be starting September 22nd, which is like soon. I'm super excited. So I just want to thank you, Dr. Aysha, for coming, and I want our sisters on Zoom here to stick with us. But we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here on YouTube. And if you want some more information about Dr. Aisha's course, The Fiqh of Marriage, which is very comprehensive from what I've heard and seen from previous students, including me. But you can't get enough. I'm going to take this class like every time you teach it, okay? Mashallah. But so basically, if you want some more information on how to join the fiqh of marriage, you can go ahead and visit us at www.gemsoflight.org, and we hope to see you all, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Aisha. Thank
Allah
you.
barik fiki. Let's allow the people that would like to unmute themselves and ask questions or even put it in the chat.
Okay,
to-
we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up, and we'll have like a separate one, inshallah. Okay.
So let's
Okay.
first allow for those that are okay with
No,
having.
no,
recorded.
can you stop? Okay. Okay. Yeah, because I'm gonna do it separate. I'm gonna record it separately,
Okay.
inshallah. Okay.
So, all right, but we are live streaming. So for those that would like to ask questions, and they're okay with being on YouTube, go ahead. You can put your questions out there. So this was more of an intro to fiqh of marriage, which inshallah will be starting in a couple of days actually, and it's a whole series. It's going to be almost 2 hours per session, and I will not stop till we take everything within that course. So we won't terminate the course and make it incomplete, but we will continue everything exactly the way we did fiqh of worship. We complete everything and will not stop, even if the semester had stopped, because we are committed to having a complete series in everything. And hopefully, inshallah, have these recorded, and inshallah you'll have the material as well. And you know me, I don't like crunched material. I like to give every single material that I teach the details and haqqahu wa mustahaqqa, right? Salma, go ahead, dear.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Okay, so my question, I guess, would be, I feel like a lot of us sometimes we have like really high standards when it comes to what we're looking for. And I just really wanted to know, like, what should we really focus on? And how detailed should we be when it comes to compatibility? How do we gauge that? Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So that's a whole lecture, but I will try to make it short. When we speak about compatibility, الكفاءة, scholars actually had differences of opinions on the compatibility and what to look into. Okay, so you had, for fiqh al-Hanafi, they went in lots of details on compatibility and considered farther than what the majority of the scholars had mentioned. Let me just make at least kind of like a border. The majority of the scholars, they considered that compatibility in a man coming to ask for the woman's hand in marriage and not the other way around. So they would look at religion being the key thing, and they would also look at nasab. And what that means, we're talking about progeny, we're talking about culture, we're talking about wealth, we're talking about social status, all of that. But then the fiqh al-Hanafi, they actually had considered that you cannot talk about social status just from the angle of money. So let's say she's a rich woman, okay? That you can't just talk about her being a rich woman with this amount of money, or at least with this amount of money that her family is making, without talking about the other things, such as education, such as perhaps maybe the social status and the authority that her family has and your family has, etc. So they consider that all these play out in a certain mindset, in a certain status, in a certain culture, in a certain background, and how it would create a possibility and a better probability of a stable marriage. Okay, this is key. So when we talk about today, we would definitely take in consideration also a couple things when we're talking about deen. We know no faqih, no scholar would disagree that deen is a key thing in terms of qualification, in terms of compatibility, that deen is a key thing. If you are religious and she is not considering religiosity or practicing the religion as of any importance, then to somehow think that I'll give her hidayah and she'll be basically practicing. And if you are religious, but he's basically a successful person in terms of making money, but you are a religious person, then certainly once you get into the marriage, thinking that you can rechange the person, well, good luck if you do. But coming with that assurance that you would change the person once you are married to them, etc., then you had right there started the cornerstone of building your house on a hill. If you're building your house on a hill or on a cliff, then you would end in falling any minute. You cannot build your house on a cliff and expect success or even having your home basically not fall any minute. So where do I put in this compatibility in? You would basically make sure that you would have 4 keystones within your marriage. Number 1 is the deen. Number 2 is basically that nafs, that area where, yes, you are compatible in your health as well. You're compatible in your nafs. You're compatible in recognizing your life, etc. We're not just talking about the preservation of nafs. You're not going to be killing one another, but you're recognizing as well that there's a compatibility even in your health as well, because this is key. And number 3, mental health. Compatibility in mental health is also very important. But if she's basically going through, let's say, bipolar, or probably maybe a certain maybe level of depression, etc., well, the man also has to understand that, hey, there's something that you would have to deal with here. Are you ready to deal with this? Are you ready to help in treating or healing this case? If not, then or same thing with her. If he's coming in with probably a certain mental disorder, or probably let's say a depression or whatever it is that he's coming in with, then yes, you might actually end up needing to work in healing or treating this person, or at least compromising a number of different things in order to get things in order. Number 4, which is chastity. Is this person, you and him, how important is family to them? How important is making a family and taking care of their children, whether making their kids basically grow in an Islamic environment, in basically an environment where we're willing to contribute whatever it takes to raise our children in Islamic upbringing, to basically consider our priorities. Is it our children? Is it having a nice car? Is it having a nice house? Is it showing off our clothes? Is it basically appearing in a good appearance in front of our in-laws? What really is most important to us? Because at the end, of course, the man is going to come in, and that's the key thing where, yes, how do I consider money management? The money management is going to be, do I consider deen first? Do I consider my health? Do I consider my mental health? Do I consider my family? And that's that area of when we look at compatibility, we have to be compatible in those areas in order to make sure that we're standing on, let's say, corners and pillars that are going to help us put in a foundation of a compatible two-part areas, how the husband and the wife were willing to make these pillars, to make that foundation basically stand on a formidable foundation. And how do we make that qualification? That's where you would recognize what basically your priorities are. If you recognize your priority is religion, then the first thing I want you to look at is your religion. You recognize that having, let's say, a foundation in having the children's religion in place, etc. Well, then you would have to consider, is he a person that is spending some time to learn about his deen? Is he spending some time to, let's say, also get a job? Is he also a quitter? Or is he somebody that, no, he has a history of being a person consistent, determined, and therefore, hey, maintained a good job for these number of years, maintained good determination in completing education for these many years? Or was he always a quitter? Drop out in school, dropped out from so many different jobs, even when it came to family, decided to drop out of the family structure and basically live on his own because he couldn't handle basically his brothers and sisters' attitude or his mom or dad's pressure, etc. Well, sorry, but that's a sign of failure. That's not a sign of success. That means the chances are when you get married and you're not getting into, you know, in that relationship into the best get along, yeah, I'm just going to decide to separate. I'm just going to decide to drop out and get out of and leave this marriage and separate and divorce and etc. Well, that's basically why we would see our the children in the US, for example. Yeah, I want to move out and live on my own. My mom is pressuring me too much. My brothers and sisters, they're just headaches. They're just a pain, etc. Well, what do? We basically drop out. We move out on our own. Chances are when they get married, they're going to drop out and they're going to decide to divorce. If they dropped out of school, they dropped out of work, they dropped out of their family structure, then the chances are they did not learn how to compromise and how to create these social skills in order to be successful partners, companions, successful in creating a family bond. So the most important thing that you want to remember is that putting in these factors of, yeah, must be a PhD, must be a master's, must have this much money, etc. That's not necessarily what makes a person be a qualified person for you. You want to remember that. We're talking about the qualities within and not the qualities externally. What do I mean by that? You may think that if a person has this amount of money, that they are going to be generous. No. Having money does not mean generosity. Generosity. Being good looking does not mean this person's going to be romantic or this person's going to be loving, etc. Good looking is one thing, and being there for the wife or the husband is another thing. Completely different thing. Having education, or let's say a degree in whatever degree that this person has, does not mean understanding. And this is key. Many times when, you know, I did marriage in marriage and matchmaking, and I'll tell you many times they would say, yeah, I need they have to be educated till this degree, this job, how much are they making, etc. And we're looking at the pragmatic things and not realizing that in marriage, in the way that these factors play out in human beings is completely different than the way they would play out in a company. It's
that's very true. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like I've seen sisters who they want like PhDs and they end up waiting forever and not finding a spouse.
I don't want to necessarily say, get married to somebody that
Or
is
the people,
probably
the
not
men with tons of money, and
right. Well,
it gets to be the point where there's no perfect guy.
right. But, I don't want to say, don't look for the qualification, Nora, but I'm trying to say that the crude way in thinking, in laying out the qualifications of a PhD, and as if you're looking at a CV for a job. Okay, a CV for a job is completely different than, let's say, a background or a qualification in a marriage, because it plays out differently. In a marriage relationship, it plays out differently because you're talking about mindset. You're talking about personality. You're talking about a completely different dynamic. When you are in a marriage relationship, you could be a PhD and your husband could be basically, maybe a 2-year diploma if they went to college, but this person is a person that did their own homework to educate themselves in, let's say, how to think in a scientific way. And I don't mean by scientific way meaning, solid science, but I'm thinking about, laying out, how do we communicate? How do we listen? How do we create a dialogue? How do we create this? Now, you want to keep in mind, someone can be with no education, never got their degree in probably college, etc., may make a better companion and have better communication skills than a person that might have a PhD. Just keep that one in mind. And that's the same thing. And you're talking about maybe a person that may be making 60 grains a year can actually give you better money management than a person that's probably making 400K a year. They can have all that money, 400,000, but then the money management is so wrong that a lot of this money goes to waste.
Not just that, but like they could lose their job.
Absolutely. Well, let's just say they're really good in remaking that money and, all of that, whatever. At the end is that money management and how we consider our priorities is completely different than understanding generosity. So just because that person considered, hey, they know how to make money, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to live an extravagant life, a happy life. Money does not make happiness, but money is one of those factors that will definitely bring you some level of happiness. But you looking at yourself, who you are and what you are is going to determine the qualification of what and who is compatible to you. So you really have to learn about yourself first, what you are and who you are, what your priorities are, and what your goal is. And then you're going to say, okay, my goal is in the long term, al-akhirah. My goal is to raise Muslim children, to raise religious kids, to raise this in a family. Then in that situation, you would have to look into that goal and not get into too many details. Because once you get into too many details, then you're going to find yourself going too utopian. You got to be realistic. There's no one that's going to be 100% fitting every single let's say list of what qualification and what makes a perfect guy. There's no such thing as a perfect guy, just like you're not perfect either. You're not perfect either. So you would have to weigh what you are willing to compromise with and what is the most important thing to you is. So I hope I answered that one. And we're going to talk about the different qualifications that al-fuqaha, comparing al-madhab al-Hanafi with the majority, and what those madhab had said about maybe a job. Can a woman that's probably a doctor get married to perhaps a teacher, and how do we relate these qualifications into also what the scholars had mentioned, and put these pieces together. So that's what we'll do in fiqh of marriage, inshallah. I hope I answered that one. Was it Selma? I hope I answered.
Yes, you did, Dr. Aysha. I just wanted to ask one last question. I remember that you used to offer premarital counseling. Is that something you still offer, or was that even something you offered? If
So
I'm
I
remembering
would
correctly?
like to say, number one is that I'm not a licensed counselor, but I didn't study marriage therapy, but I basically look at it from the Islamic lens and may do that reconciliation or counseling basically from the Islamic lens, and not from, the different tools that a marriage therapist would do. So if we're speaking about, we're talking about a dispute maybe, and is this my right Islamically, is that my right, and etc., then I would say, okay, then you can talk to me. But if you're disagreeing, you both agree that you want this marriage to work out, okay, but then you're, trying to figure out how to make this communication become in, a better way, then I'm not the right person. Then you would have to go to a marriage therapist, because they're the ones that are specialized to help bring about a reconciliation, a communication, basically that ground, and how we can create a relationship in a foundation for a dialogue and not a monologue. So
Okay,
that's
got
what
it.
a therapist would do.
Got it. What about premarital?
So premarital, it depends on, like I said, it depends on what the area of, let's say, maybe dispute is in. It doesn't have to be dispute, but maybe, let's say, trying to figure out the Islamic side of it. So that's what I could do.
Okay, I understand. Jazakallah khair.
Wa iyyakum. So any other questions?
And does anyone have any questions about the actual course coming up?
Anab Abdi, she wanted to say something. She unmuted herself and then muted herself again. So Anab, go ahead, dear. All right, inshallah. Noura, you want to, Salma again?
Yes. Yeah, can you just give sorry, I joined a bit late. Can you give a recap of what the course will be about? And is this part, like right now, is what we're doing like the course itself, or is this something else?
No, right now this is more of basically explaining what we'll be doing. This is not part of the course, definitely. But the course is going to be about, one, marriage. We're talking about basically the time of proposal, and of course we're going to talk about the qualifications. We'll be talking about rights and responsibilities, halal and haram relationships, intimacy. We'll be talking about wali. We'll be talking about wedding. We'll be talking about all the different things that relate to marriage. Anything that relates to fiqh of marriage from A to Z, we'll be basically covering it. Everything.
Okay.
Oh, there's questions in the chat. Let's see. Mood swings due to PMS don't count, right? Well, I mean, mood swings and all those different things, they basically, do have an effect on the relationship. So you would definitely want someone that fully understands, perhaps whether it's PMS or probably, whatever condition that you may have. You want the other person to recognize the implication of that on your mood swings, on your personality. And there are certain things that we may not realize, okay? There are certain things that we may not realize until later, that this person had this condition, and this is why they behave this way. And many times we may not realize it until perhaps maybe after many years that a specialist comes in and says, hey, you are not necessarily evil, but you have this and this condition. Let's say maybe a neurologist might come in, or probably maybe a doctor, or maybe a therapist or psychologist or whatever comes in, and they would explain the motives were not necessarily cruel motives, but they were basically just perhaps disabilities, or perhaps a makeover that is different than other people's makeover. So, yep. So we'll be talking about that, inshallah. Would you say a man's work or ethic history is more important than how much he's making right now? So when we speak about ethic history, and when we speak about a person's commitment, okay, you cannot just judge how one thing happens and not put in the context of it. The context of it is what's going to determine whether the person had, let's say, their ethics, or basically their ethics and work history in place, or whether it was that this person was creative and learning new things, and they were basically, let's say, figuring out the path of success. So I think it's important to understand the context and put in these areas within that dynamic in order to understand things right. You cannot take out things out of their context, because the second you take it out of its context, then you had basically looked into a broken image. You took out a part of that image, and then you started looking at it, and then you judge that person based on that piece of that image that's taken out of its context. So I would definitely say look into the context before you would make that judgment, and then make a final judgment that this person is a dropout, or this person, so somebody might have dropped out of, let's say, college, but they've dropped out of college because they needed to work to provide for their family, because their father was probably disabled, couldn't work, so they had to drop out of college to provide for their family. Am I going to call that a college dropout, or am I going to call that a person that has great commitment to family and a great commitment to a certain priority, that the context in his life, he couldn't drop out, he couldn't basically lose his ethics and just leave the family and say, oh, I don't want to drop out of college no matter what it takes. Well, no, he dropped out of college because he recognized that, hey, I need to figure out a job, because feeding the family, which my father cannot provide for, is right now my priority. And later on down the road, I will probably get a degree, or probably figure out a way on how to continue perhaps putting in more factors of success. So I think it's important to look at the context before we would take out little fragments of pieces and try to judge them based on those. When does the course start? September 22nd. Am I right, Noura? So
Yes,
September.
Monday, September 22nd. And the timing is on our website for all the courses. Let me see, I'm opening it right
How
now
do you sign up
because
for the class? It's on gemsoflight.org. When do we meet for the class? So it's going to be
we have Fridays 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Minnesota time, and Sundays 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Minnesota time.
Okay. And inshallah, let's see, what if the guy seems to be good, but you observe bad mannerisms in the family around him and how they handle situations and approach people? Kind of feels like a gamble. Is it just better to pass as a red flag? So definitely, when you look at family, when you look at family and the way that they may affect a person's behavior, the way they mirror, the way that person A or person B. So if you're seeing, let's say, a family that is generous, chances are this person's going to be generous. But if you see a family that is stingy, chances are he's going to be stingy. If you see a family that is easily provoked, very, always angry, chances are this person is going to be a person that is easily provoked and easily angry and basically impulsive. But is that necessarily the case in each and every single one? The answer is no. It depends on how each and every single person had played out on their own. Some, they didn't want to repeat their family's probably failure or history or shortcomings. They learned a lesson. They're like, you know what? I know and I recognize that in my family, we have this impulsive, angry behavior, and I saw the implication on it. I don't want to repeat it. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to see it in our family. I saw that they were always pessimistic about everything. I don't want to repeat this. So it would be fair to question the person. I don't want to say interrogate, but I will say question. Hey, people are saying this about your family. Are you a person that basically is seeing that as well? If they see it and they're like, I know that is actually true. This is very common in my family, but I'm a person that doesn't want to live it. It's not a rhetoric. It's not a narrative to create. No, I would like to see. So what did you do to not mirror this type of behavior that you had seen in your family? How are you different? What did you do to be different? How are you going to put that into practice in your marriage? How do you determine that this will not happen and we will not be another play out of what goes on into your family, and that you were going to be different? So, you can interview, you can ask, you can see whether he really is committed or whether he really is recognizing the problem but doesn't know how to fix it. And this is key. Some people, they recognize the problem, but they don't know how to fix it. And others, they recognize the problem and they become the experts on how to fix it. So what is going to determine is this person a flower in the midst of a thorny garden? Or is this person a thorn that grew up in a thorn garden? That's what you would have to work on and really see. Is this a red flag and skip? Or is this person not a red flag, but a person that probably mastered on how not to be what his family were probably living in? Let's see, here's another question. Never going to end. It's okay, Nuna. Just a couple questions, inshallah. Let's see. The sister is saying, question about gauging the level of deen. If he does the 5 pillars, prayer on time, prays sunnah, but has no intention of growing in his deen beyond the 5 pillars, is it a ground for moving forward? So it depends. It doesn't have to be. When we're speaking about, has the prayer on time, fasts, and what do you mean? Sometimes I would see that there is sometimes a utopian understanding of what it means to grow in deen. to grow in deen, sometimes I would see people thinking that, yeah, they have to probably memorize, they probably have to, deen is more of a commitment. Qiyam al-layl, etc. What is that commitment that is in this person? Halal, haram, is that the key thing? Are they taking that seriously? Or is the qiyam al-layl that they are doing is superficial? Is the niqab a superficial thing? But when it comes to perhaps maybe dealing with deen on other matters, doesn't even care about it, then that niqab is going to be a superficial thing. Then that qiyam al-layl is a superficial thing. Then that beard is superficial. So you would really have to see how much of a righteousness and how much of a religious integrity is there really in that person. Sometimes we look at an appearance in what makes a person religious and not really how this is really played out in true religious integrity. So I would say, ladies, especially ladies, not because he's a sheikh, it doesn't make him religious. Not because he's got a beard, it doesn't make him religious. Not because he memorized the Quran and knows 10 qira'at, it doesn't make him religious. This is probably a good indication of being religious, but being religious is when you're angry, are you going to be either khasama fajr, when you are in a dispute with somebody, are you going to consider that this person's rights are your area of playing on people's on people's rights? Is that what's going to happen? Or are you going to stay committed to the principle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked you to stay committed to? Okay, so this is extremely important. How do we define religiosity? Is it a superficial thing, or is it really a commitment? This is extremely important. So it's not about how many qiyam al-layls. Do you fast Mondays and Thursdays? This is a good sign, but this is a relationship between the person and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Religiosity is, are you really going to be committed? Are you really going to be a person that when you're angry at me, when you going because you're not happy with me? Or are you going to stay committed? Let's see. Hold on, there's another question right there. What if the guy seems to be good for you but has bad mannerism? So that one we just answered. If a woman's main goal is to raise religious children, and in this regard she prioritizes religion, meaning she prefers sincere, pious person, even if he lacks wealth or physical attractiveness, is this utopia? So it depends on the person. Some people, they may regard certain things as, let's say, a priority. I mean, you want to consider religion, but be careful from disregarding the other things that are important to you. It's, some people, I've had a case where height to her was the most important thing. The person is religious, but she just couldn't go beyond it. She is way taller than him and he's shorter, way shorter. And it just affected her. Some people, this is a priority to her. It affected her marriage, affected her love, affected the relationship. And I know it may be superficial for some. I don't see height as the thing that is extremely important, but remember that Sahabiya. Why am I commenting on height? Because even the Sahabiya, remember that Sahabiya that was married to Thabit ibn Qais, and she basically went to the Prophet ﷺ and she said that she wanted to get a divorce from Thabit ibn Qais and wanted to do khulu', and she said لا لا أنكر عليه لا أنكر عليه لا في خلق ولا في دين. Not in his mannerisms, not in his religiosity. I have nothing to complain about. He's great in his deen. إلا أني أكره الكفر في الإسلام. But I would hate to get into kufr, and we'll talk about that in the fiqh of marriage and what she meant by that after being Muslim. And the other ahadith and other commentators would say that she basically disliked how short he was compared to the other men. So she wanted, I guess, a more masculine appearance, and considered that his height affected her relationship with him, and decided that she wanted to do khulu', just give him back the mahr that he had paid, and basically end this marriage relationship. So like I said, just like the Sahabiya, to her height, she thought she can go beyond that, but then this Sahabiya considered that no, it's a key thing in my marriage. It's a key thing that I would see that it plays out as a masculinity in my mind, and I don't want it. So like I said, that's from one person to another. I wouldn't necessarily judge and make it and say that it's utopian to think that way. I would say this is a relative thing, and we differ in what is a priority to us and to another person. So I would say just make sure that you weigh and you balance in the way that you would see the qualifications and how they basically play out in an even way, and not be too utopian and think that you would want perfect in each and every single corner. So we'll talk about that in details, inshallah. How do we overcome immense fear of getting remarried? Okay, fair enough. I would first say maybe a marriage counselor, because they're specialized in therapy and psychology. I would definitely say perhaps talk to a marriage counselor, because they'll help you, as specialists, they'll help you go over the phobia and go over, those fears, and let you know that hope is there. That's one thing. Definitely do these sessions, and great to reach out to a Muslim therapist. Okay, that's number one. Number two, in Islam, of course, we don't live our life being centered around any human being. We recognize that our success is not determined by our relationship with X or Y or Z, but our success is basically in our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we would make that dua. Ya Allah, Allahumma la tadharni farda wa anta khairul warithin. Ya Allah, don't make me lonely, don't make me alone, and bring me the best. Bring me the best, and bring me what would bring me happiness. And we would depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we would recognize that whatever trauma, whatever fear, whatever shortcomings, whatever failures that we went through, that's not the end. And we would know that hope is in Allah Almighty, not in people. When things go wrong, they went wrong within that person, but that doesn't mean that there's no hope in having a better opportunity. It's the same thing whether we're speaking about marriage, or whether we're speaking about a job, or maybe grades in school, etc. So a Muslim knows no failure. A Muslim does not know that what it means to basically lose hope. A Muslim always has hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A Muslim always knows that they'll depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for better opportunities. And hey, after all, we would know that that most of the Prophet ﷺ's wives were actually either widowed or divorcees. Okay, only Sayyidah Aysha was the only one that was virgin with no marriage experience. Okay, so that lets us learn that whether it's divorce or whether it's death, that's not the end, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be the one that we would put our hope in, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be the one to give us the chances of getting better luck, inshallah, in the future. Is a woman's responsibility limited to just saying yes or no regarding a proposal? Or does she have the right to ask about the man, especially about his beliefs? No, definitely. She has the right to interview this person that's coming in, ask about his deen, how committed, and basically see whether this person is committed to the deen, and probably, what's important to them. So it's not that she's just sitting down and just saying, yes, no, swipe left, swipe right. No, she can ask questions like, okay, your relationship with your sisters, how's that? Because if his relationship with his sister, for example, is not the best relationship, most likely this person does not know how to deal with women. If he doesn't know how to deal with his sister, then he's going to be a failure in dealing with you, most likely. If he doesn't know how to deal with his mom, if he doesn't know how to deal with his brother, then he lacks social skills to deal with you too. So when you look at family, his brother, sister, father, mother, that's going to be that area. That's going to be that area that had proven their social skills in dealing with the outside world. That's going to be that, let's call it the foundation. So you would basically question, it's okay to question things like, okay, how's your relationship with your family? How many jobs did you work? What are the jobs? What did you like about that job? And what did you not like about this job? And that basically will give you an idea about this person. Is he not liking the other job because, oh, it just, I didn't find myself in it. What does that even mean? What do you mean I didn't find what are you looking for? What do you mean you didn't find you didn't find yourself in it? What are you looking for? Maybe you're not going to find me in you. What does that look like? So that gives you an idea of this person's mindset. Are they looking for a mirage, or are they looking for something that they recognize what it is? Especially during our time, there's a lot of utopia that doesn't exist. They're looking for a certain feeling. They're looking for some kind of a dopamine, or they're looking for some kind of a, like a flowery thing that doesn't exist. Like, oh, I didn't find myself in this. I'm not sure I'm happy with this. And they're looking for some kind of a flowery feeling that's going to tell them that this is right for you, or some kind of a, I don't know, a light to appear. That's not going to happen. So you would really want to say, is this person realistic, not realistic? Is this person committed? Is this person not committed? Is this person having an understanding of their priorities? Does this person recognize borders and boundaries? This is extremely important. Because if they don't recognize borders and boundaries, then the chances are maybe their family might just intervene too much in your relationship with your husband, and he doesn't know how to say to himself that, this information, it doesn't need to go to my mother. This is a relationship between me and you. It doesn't basically have anything to do with my father, anything to do with my mother. This is between us. And does he know how to put those borders in place? How do we understand this? How does he understand this? Does he know how to play it out? How did he do it? How does he do it now? How will he do it in the future? For example, if we're talking about in-laws, okay?
All of these different things, they are extremely important. We'll talk about more, inshallah, in class. Let's see, if someone is treated harshly after a divorce, such as experiencing financial abuse or being denied the proper support that Islam prescribes, would it be wise to return to that person for the sake of the children? Or could the thought that no man will accept a person with the children be, so that's, to go back in a marriage relationship, it really depends on how toxic is that, okay? And is it worth it or is it not? I don't think that we could just answer that question in laying out just, these categories and these factors, but I would say we would really need to understand the context of it. And no one really understands the complete context but you, that basically is a divorcee to really see, is it worth, am I capable of compromising? Am I capable of being patient? Is it better? Were the kids doing a better job when their father was around? Or is it better for me and better for the children to be out of the relationship, etc.? All of those things are to be determined based on basically the context. So it's not one answer fits all. Just keep that in mind. It's not one answer fits all. It depends on the type of behavior. It depends, if this person is an alcoholic, I would definitely say, you need to leave, if we're talking about such a thing. But if this person has, let's say, anger management issues, I would say, hey, maybe learn how to not provoke this anger, maybe give him his space, maybe try to see when he gets impulsive, maybe try to reduce the number of episodes. So how does this anger go out of control? What can we do? How can we reduce from the implications of it? And can we maybe ask that he would join maybe anger management programs? There are different things that, when you compare, for example, impulsive in anger management issues is completely different than when you're talking about somebody that is alcoholic, okay, or somebody that is schizophrenic, for example, okay. So it plays out differently. It basically, the implication is different, and therefore some of it is easy to cure, easy to maybe avoid, and some is not easy at all. And by the way, you just need to keep in mind that, I've had cases where they are doctors, and I mean top doctors. I mean the head of the departments, okay? And had anger management issues. I mean, real anger management issues. They're doctors, they're head of department, they at work, in that clinic, they are just the perfect people. They're professors, they're the head of the department, and from those very prestigious universities. But then at home, that things don't play out right. They're just throwing things, whatever's in front of them, boom, right there, and really causing massive destruction. But then, there are certain things that you cannot just leave because, hey, the situation's going to be really big and definitely having a big implication on the children, and you're not going to be able to control them, etc. So how can I work things differently? So that's when we would basically have to be wise. 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 3 years from now, what is this going to look like? Is this worth compromising? Is this worth basically saying, nope, that's it, we need to basically end this? How and what is the definition of toxic? Sometimes you would have to live in a relationship because to get out of the relationship is probably far worse than staying in it. So we would have to get a number of different things basically answered before we would probably give a recommendation. And certainly you would make that recommendation, not anyone else, unless this is a definitive thing. Let's see. This is considered immodest for her to inquire. So how should a person handle this? To question about things within, let's say, a proposal. So I think it's important to communicate it with your family. And you do have the right Islamically to have more than one session and sitting. And certainly there's going to be a time when, of course, you're going to be speaking, you're going to be talking, and then talking about it with your family to make sure that the family also understands your Islamic right to have a good interview, to make sure that you are making the final decision, whether a yes or a no, based on your maturity in answering or even observing and analyzing the answers to the question. But you want to keep in mind your analysis to those answers. Some people are real con artists, and especially men. Men can be the worst con artists that you can imagine. They have social skills. They know how to fake it if they want to make it and get you. They know what kind of a person you are. And if you are a religious person, they'll make themselves appear like they are the most religious people. Men can be the worst and basically the best con artist out there. And that's why it's important to get your wali involved, because men know how men play the game. And men, and especially narcissist men, they are extremely smart, by the way. They know that I don't want to say the word smart, because smart gives me a good connotation, but I will say those narcissists out there, when they want something, they know how to be the best actors. They know how to be the best actors. So you really want a man involved and ask about their history. Asking about their history is extremely important, because their history is going to give you a lot about their future. I don't know about your future, because we can't look into the future, but the lens that I'm going to read that person's future is only through reading their past. Their past is going to give me a great deal of information to know the pattern that they're living their life based on. Is it failure? Is it commitment? Is it toxic? Is it gaslighting? Is it trying to, get around and basically play games and etc.? That's what his boyfriends are going to tell you. That's his boy enemies are going to tell you. They'll know exactly what that person's like, because men in front of women, they're completely different, and the way they play out are completely different. The way they would work out with boys and in front of boys is completely different than in front of women. So definitely work on doing a background check and depend on that more than the interview that you would do. The interview, everybody will make themselves appear like they are the most religious, they are perfect, and just by giving you the perfect answer, it's like a test, does not really mean that person is committed to the theories that they had basically presented. Okay, let's see. So many marriages break up in my community because of family members. We're going to talk about family members and in-laws and all of that, inshallah, in class, because that's a lot of details and laying out the borders. And that's what the fiqh of marriage is really focused on, is understanding borders, understanding these foundations to make sure that we understand fiqh of marriage, because fiqh is all about understanding. Fiqh is about understanding text and context. So stay tuned for that one. Let's see. She's saying, because if they had acted un-Islamic in divorce, so if they were religious, wouldn't they follow Islamic ruling on child support? So yes and no. Because a father, when, for example, a divorce happens, a father in his relationship with his children is going to be very different from his relationship with his ex. His relationship with his ex is basically this kind of relationship that, yes, animosity, perhaps, maybe I'm trying to, figure out a way to retaliate. But a relationship with your children, there's an instinct that you always feel that they're a part of you. Okay. So I wouldn't necessarily judge the retaliation, let's call it psychology, all right? And the way it plays out in the way that a father might get angry at his daughter or his son and probably feel that one day, he can divorce a wife, but he can never divorce his children. He can never just say, you know what, I'm disowning my child. That's never going to happen. That's never going to happen, because he's always going to feel they belong to me. I can never do that. All right. Unless he really, this person, unless he had, just, I would say, fitra being contaminated, and his mind is contaminated, his heart is contaminated. You got to be a really cruel person to disown your children. You got to be a really cruel person to disown your children. It can happen that marriage relationships may end in divorce and just not work out, but you really got to be a really cruel person to disown your children. But it can happen that two pious man and wife, they're married, but their marriage didn't work out. Just like, hey, Asma bint Abi Bakr with Zubayr ibn al-Awwam. And just mind you, Zubayr ibn al-Awwam was one of the 10 Sahaba that were promised Jannah. His marriage didn't work out with Asma bint Abi Bakr as-Siddiq. Imagine that. Who's that? That's the daughter of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. She's pious, no doubt. She's that in Nitaqain. And Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, of course, he raised his daughter Asma bint Abi Bakr. And Zubayr al-Awwam, you can't complain about his religion. He's one of the 10 people promised Jannah. There's no question about his religion. All right? But still, the marriage didn't work out. And he divorced Asma bint Abi Bakr. So when I say, for example, a religious person and a religious person, that's not enough to make a foundation of a successful marriage. It's not enough. It goes beyond that. And just because, let's say, person Zubayr al-Awwam, for example, may not have been maybe fit for Asma bint Abi Bakr, it doesn't necessarily mean that other women are not fit. And it doesn't mean that he himself is a person that no one would want. And same thing, just because, Zainab bint Jahsh wasn't fit for Zayd ibn Haritha, it doesn't mean that she's not going to be fit for the Prophet ﷺ. Zayd ibn Haritha was the Prophet ﷺ's adopted son. Okay? And Zayd ibn Haritha was a Sahabi that was a shaheed in the Battle of Mu'tah. But he wasn't the right fit for Zainab bint Jahsh. Sahabiyya, the Prophet ﷺ's wife. The Prophet ﷺ basically said about Zainab bint Jahsh, because of her generosity, that she was a woman that was also going to be in Jannah. When you look at that, religiosity, they have religiosity. Zainab bint Jahsh didn't, I guess it just didn't fit well with Zayd ibn Haritha. It can happen. They can both be religious, but just not blend well. So I hope I answered these questions. Stay tuned for, inshallah, the future fiqh of marriage, inshallah. So I hope, inshallah, you would join us then. I'm excited, a lot to say. And we will not stop till, inshallah, we continue all the different matters that relate to fiqh of marriage and fiqh of divorce. It's going to be fiqh of marriage, fiqh of divorce, fiqh of iddah. We're going to be talking a lot about so many different things. Trust me, there's so much to cover. So this is it, inshallah. Noura, if you would want to, oh, she actually left. Okay, I'm the only one here. Okay. So if anybody would like to unmute themselves for the last thing, inshallah, and then we'll end right here. So this is it, inshallah.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikha.
Allah barik fiki, Fatima Jibari. You have no option but to join class, inshallah.
Inshallah, I'm joining it.
إن شاء الله. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت and السلام